Welcome to the Latina Moms Building Wealth interview series. This is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as advice. It is an honor today to have Carmen Chucrala from Habloft LLC. Hi, Carmen. How are you? Welcome, and thank you for taking the time this morning to talk to us.
No, thank you, Michelle, for inviting me.
Carmen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Share a little bit about your story, and then a little bit about how you help women.
Hey, so Michelle, I'm Colombian. I am not first generation in this country, but my kids will be. And so I have always figured out, what do I want to build wealth for myself? My mom was a single mom and she worked at a factory. She got me a job there and I freaked out looking at her and I said, Mom, one day I'm going to get you out of here. And so while I was in high school, I got a job at a Century 21 as a receptionist and kind of learned that part of the industry. Then I went off to college and I was the actual tutor for the real estate students, even though I was 18 years old, so I couldn't get a license at the time. I wrote all the exams. And once I turned 21, I call her my mentor. She's like, hey, Carmen, here's your transcript. Go get your, broker's license. And I said, okay. And at that point, I graduated college and my mom saved $3,000, which was huge for her.
Absolutely.
And so she gave me that money and I went and I bought my first real estate property instead of going off to Europe. So that's how I started investing into real estate. My background is actually I have a master's degree in forensic accounting. So I was a consultant for many years as well. And I've always been in real estate. So it's like the two are my passions combined together. And I utilize that. And I've been very quiet about what I do to actually help my clients build wealth through real estate, but also learning the accounting portion of it to do it correctly because I didn't do it correctly
Mhm.
years ago. And it's no secret because I'm in the Latinas in real estate book. I lost $3.2 million at the age of 29. And
Wow.
to me, I call that an education. So I call it, that's my graduation right there, $3.2 million dollars. And I vowed that if anyone sat with me or worked with me, they would never, ever go through what I did because, I learned the lessons.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back to two things that you said,
Yes.
because it's as a money coach, this is something that's important to me. You said my mom gave me $3,000 and I invested versus going to Europe.
Yes.
Why? In that moment, that decision that you had to make, it's a delayed gratification, right? Like you basically said, hey, this was, but why? Like I want you to go back to that moment when mom said, here, Carmen.
So, sitting in that receptionist office, I got to see all the transactions that were happening between all of the agents. And then I saw, when they would sell something to someone and then they would turn around and then resell it again. And I'm like, wow, this is a lot of money because I was the one inputting it into the system. And, I got to understand like the FHA, conventional purchases and all of that. And while I was in college, I got a good job offer from someone for the accounting piece of it. And I said, well, my mom gave me these $3,000. I studied 6 years of French, but I can go to Paris at any time. So I took those $3,000 and I said, you know what? How can I multiply this? And when I
Mm-hmm.
did that, I went and I bought a building. It was like $167,000. It was just enough for that. My mom had refinanced, bought off my car because she didn't want me to have more student loan debt than I already still do. And I went and I pawned it to do the flip. So um, but you know what? I ended up doing the flip. I had a one of my colleagues at the site. I said, "Hey, you want to partner on this venture with me?" And he's like, "Okay." We had just enough money to get through everything, and then we just had to finish the tile work ourselves. So I learned construction very quickly. But we ended up refinancing the building, paying off all our debt. I got my title back from my car, so my mom wouldn't be mad at me. And then we were making like $1,200, $1,300 each a month on the rents.
And so how many trips to Europe, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then the first, of course, the first thing we did wrong is we both went and bought BMWs. Yeah, like okay, you're in your 20s, you're rolling a BMW, and that was the first mistake I think I made. But
Mm-hmm.
then from there, we ended up selling the building 2 years later, reduced our capital gains on it, and we each made $70,000. And I
Wow.
was 22 years old. And I said, okay, there's something here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so I like to, I recently told one of my clients and I said, I want you to focus on buying more assets. And
Yes.
she's like, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, because so many women and, my audience of Latina moms and so many women want to focus on because our moms didn't have it, our parents didn't have it, that we feel like, well, I got to buy it. I got an education. I got a degree. My parents don't. I should be better than them, right? Like I don't want to be in this cycle stuck, like I can't provide and teaching your kids. But that delayed gratification, those assets, I always tell them, those assets are later going to pay for those vacations, right?
Absolutely.
For the camper, for all the things that you want. So I think that that was amazing that you made a decision, right? It's a choice.
It is. It definitely is a choice, and it's a risk too. It was a major risk. I was young, and I said, okay, well, I'm gonna do this. But I observed through that whole time that I worked through, in this real estate office.
But let's go back again. How about in that decision, you could have chose, I'm going to go to Europe. How long would it have taken you at that age to save $3,000?
Oh, yeah. It would have been rough. It would have been rough.
Yeah,
Like,
and people don't get that, right? They're like,
no,
oh, I'll
no,
make it up. Yeah, how long? A year, 2 years, 3 years for you to be, depending on your discipline.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So,
And then something else that you said earlier that I want to highlight that I think as Latina women, or it's our mindset or our culture that we sometimes, as like you said, I'm quietly doing things. I've been doing things quietly, right?
yes. I speak a lot about that. It's our culture. And it's something I think my mom instilled in me and maybe our grandparents. They're like, oh, you do things quietly, you don't talk about it. Even that major loss that I have, she's like, oh, no one needs to know your business. And I'm like, and for a long time, I felt that was the way to do. Like even to the day, my mom will call me and she's like, "You should not have posted that on Facebook." I'm like, "Mom, it's marketing. It's marketing." And she's like, "Yeah, well, no one needs to know your business." I was like, "Everyone needs to know what I'm doing."
Right,
And this is
right.
how we lift each other. And sometimes we don't talk about things that we should be talking about because you don't know how many people in the room need to hear you.
Exactly. Exactly. Like someone right now that is in that process of, I have to make a decision, right?
Yeah,
And they hear this powerful woman who has her real estate school, who has her LLC, who's doing all these things. She did this. She made a decision. She experienced the delayed gratification, and look at where it brought her. You're empowering other women.
exactly. And we need to talk about it. Like, even if we're going through something where it's hard, like, I had a meeting at my office and I was going through some emotional things. And I'm like, guys, there's days I want to quit too. But I refuse to quit because I am creating something for our future generations. And I
Mm,
have one of my agents call me back and she's like, Carmen, I was about to quit. But when you said that, you're like, it stirred something in her where she says, I refuse to give up. And that's
mhm.
the whole thing. We're not used to talking about that.
Right. And as the leader of your company, right, it's like it humanizes you, it creates empathy. That's like, okay, she gets it, she
Yeah,
understands.
absolutely. So I'm very transparent with my agents, my company. I believe that's something that's super important in our industry because there's so many things that go like, sweep it under the rug situation. I believe in transparency, and I think that's what makes us and creates us more of a strong team.
Hmm. Hmm. And if there's something that you're super passionate about, like I know you do a lot, you wear a lot of hats,
I
and
do.
as a business owner, as the mompreneur that you are, but if there's one thing that you're super passionate about that you enjoy and you want to help women, what is that?
To me is investing in themselves. And as a culture, I believe the goal is always to help everybody around us. And I am at fault for it, but it's also a virtue, I want to say. But sometimes we forget about ourselves. So in my office, like right now, one of my agents has always wanted to buy an investment property, but always something always just came up. And I said, no, we're going to do it and we're going to do it together. I did a whole analysis of cash flows. I'm like, this is how much you're going to make. Forget it. Don't spend it. put it to the side because that's your down payment on the next one. And we finally closed on that transaction. And to me, that's what it's all about because as real estate agents, we're not always going to be showing houses. It's going to get to a point where it's tiring. We might get hurt. We might get injured. And where does the money come from? And the majority, let's be realistic, the majority of real estate agents don't have retirement funds, don't have life insurance, don't have all of these things that we would normally have on a W-2 job.
Right, right. And off camera, I was telling you that for me, real estate agents are my number one clients because of the irregular income.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And so like you said something, an accident, like we actually were looking at a home and the real estate agent actually fell down the stairs. Like went from the first floor to the basement.
Wow.
And so sometimes we don't think about that. Like, hey, if you have to be off the job for 6 months, surgery 3 months, right? What do you do if you don't have that cushion?
Exactly. Exactly. So I promote quite a bit on how to invest tax-free. And so I've been doing this for years. And then all of a sudden I came to NARUP Tampa Bay as I'm starting into from Chicago here. And they're like, oh, you really need to speak on this. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? She's like, no, you really need to speak on how, you invest tax-free and allocate money into, the self-directed and all of that. And then I did a presentation last year. I could not believe the amount of tax returns that were so incorrectly done. Like I just fixed one for someone where their tax bill was $84,000, reviewed the whole thing, and now her tax bill is $1,500.
Wow.
So then that came to me. I'm like, wow, this is our problem. This is the niche in the industry that we absolutely need. This is something that I've done for years, but I've always been silent about it because I only worked with my clients or my agents, but it's absolutely necessary and needed. And in reality, most of us as real estate agents, we're the ones that least qualify for properties because of the way our taxes are done.
Right, right. No, thank you for sharing that because I think that's so important. And I'm a big believer in staying in my wheelhouse and allowing the proper people to look at my numbers, right? Like I have a financial advisor, I have a CPA accountant, right? And as you grow, right, you want to outsource to the people that are knowledgeable, current, up to speed with things.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Carmen, before we wrap up, how can people connect with you? What can you share? Your website, some information where someone's like, I really want to be a real estate agent or I want to be able to connect with you. Who is your audience?
So my audience are real estate professionals or real estate agents. Right now we're in the Chicagoland market and in the Tampa Bay market. I'm doing a tax event on March 9th. It's free to real estate agents and it's only for real estate agents. And, they can reach out to me. They can give me a call, send me a text. My number is 773-392-6272. It's not really posted on our website because we have limited space associated with it. So if they reach out to me, then I'll be happy to send them the link for it because it's only open to like 50 spots right now.
Got it.
Yes.
I will make sure that we add that to our marketing post as we put out this interview. So thank you, Carmen, so much for taking the time to be with us, to empowering and educating our Latina moms. I really appreciate you being with us this morning.
No, thank you, Michelle, for the invitation.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.